Okay, good day, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening for people calling from different parts of the world. Welcome to today's webinar, the Professional Africa as International Seminar. Today, we're going to be talking, or really the topic today is Project U, and Engineer Evelyn is going to talk about this. It's going to be a very inspiring conversation and insightful. So my name is Urena Onyewuchi, and I will tell you a little bit about myself and then introduce Evelyn so we can go into the meat of the webinar, which I can't wait for you to hear about. So I say that I have two cultures, American culture and Igbo culture. Igbo is an ethnic group in what's called Nigeria in West Africa. And I've lived longer in the US than in West Africa, but the Igbo culture was very much ingrained in me. I have adopted more cultures over time as I've traveled and interacted with people from different cultures. Something else to note about me is that I gave the valedictorian speech at my PhD graduation. And the theme of my speech was on making community impact. So I spoke about the importance of touching lives and the community as opposed to graduating and getting a job and making all the money in the world, keeping it to yourself. It's like, what impact are you making in the world outside of yourself? Recently, I gave a talk and someone asked me, well, what are you doing for Africa? And it was a very deep and important question. So in 2016, I founded or did the first IEEE Power Africa conference in Zambia, Africa, and brought in representatives or participants from over 30 countries who were interested in advancing power energy access in Africa, because over 500 million people in Africa do not have access to power. And I wanted to change this. And that conference was a big opening for me to do that. I was excited to recruit multiple people from the diaspora. So Africans who'd left their countries in Africa and moved on to the US or Australia or Canada or the UK to pursue different opportunities, but they still have their hearts in Africa and wanted to give back. And so the conference allowed me to give them that opportunity. And I was also able to recruit African American subject matter experts who also wanted to give back to Africa. So today's talk is very important to me, very personal. And as I put on here, we're not just talking about power and energy from an industry point of view, but power and energy also from a personal point of view. How can you empower yourself? And Evelyn is going to talk about goal setting and just different topics which is why she called this Project U. And she'll talk a little bit more about it shortly. So why Power Professional Africa? I put this image here because it gives me happy memories when I was in South Africa and in Zambia and going on different safaris. It just felt like home, very relaxing, absolutely amazing. And when I was in Africa for one of the Power Africa conferences, when this idea of Professional Africa came to me, and again, because I'm half American and half Igbo, it was Africa just came to mind from an empowerment point of view, just a place with so much potential, and we're not tapping into that potential enough. And I wanted to know, how can I help us tap into that potential? So there's need. After the conference, an energy reliability organization in Africa asked me for my help to teach soft skills to its technical personnel. So they said, we have people who are strong in cybersecurity or strong in, different areas from a technical point of view, but they're not very good at communicating or leading teams or managing people. How can you help us? And so I did research on educational organizations in the US that were able to provide that need. So I supplied them with self-paced online courses to help in that area. Then during that time as well, a learning coordinator at the Central Bank of Nigeria asked me for help identifying courses for their technical training staff. So they were open to online courses and in-person courses around the world, and I helped them do that. Then taking it back home, I had colleagues who would reach out to me and they knew where I stood from a spiritual point of view, and some of them didn't have a spiritual side, I would say, but they said, we know that you do, and we need your help. So I had, for instance, some people dealing with cancer and some people dealing with marital issues and different things that were affecting them in the workplace. And they said, could you please offer us some counseling? And I was able to do that. So just putting it all together, that's how A Professional Africa was born. So here's research. Becker's Behavioral Health identified 7 most prevalent causes of stress to employees, and they surveyed about 1,000 US adults. And these are the 7 causes that came up: personal finance, mental health, debt, physical health, my home, my relationships, and my job. It's interesting that the job is number 7, but number 1 and 3 are pretty much talking about finance. And number 2 and 4 are talking about health, mental and physical. And then you talk about home and relationships. So comparing it to WebMD's research as well, they found just about the same thing, that people's personal challenges were around caregiving and financial stress and health concerns and relationship struggles, death and grief, burnout, or climate or natural disasters. So they found out, got very similar results. So we decided to focus on 5 key areas for Professional Africa: wealth, which is, finance, personal finance and debt, health, mental and physical, and relationships. And with these 3 areas, it's been the pinnacle of how we choose the webinars that we do. How can we equip people with tools to succeed before any of these areas becomes an issue. If you know how to handle your finances, maybe you would avoid getting into debt. If you know what to do about your health, then hopefully you can stay on track to being in a good health, of good health. And same thing with relationships. And then we added 2 areas: culture and style, because style is the first impression someone makes of you. So when all these 3 things are handled, if you're not able to present yourself the right way, you may not be able to climb as far as you want to from a career point of view. And culture brings everything together. Culture helps you know what your biases are. Certain cultures are attuned towards certain things and how they accept new information and how they learn. But if you know your culture, then you can start to identify when and where and how they affect how you do relationships and so on and so forth. So these are our key pillars that we touch on. So I'm going to introduce Evelyn right now. I met Evelyn a few months ago, and we've been talking since, and I've learned so much from her. And when I thought about this month, I thought, Women's History Month, and just how much empowerment she's given me and the tools that I've learned from her. And we thought, why not share it with a bigger audience? So Evelyn is the president and CEO of Envera Energy. She has more than 20 years of experience in the renewable and emerging energy sectors. Since 2009, Evelyn has built and led organizations that have supported the development, financing, and construction of over 100 gigawatts of solar, wind, energy storage, transmission, and substation projects. Evelyn's current company, Invera Energy, expands this expertise to new markets, focusing on grid reliability, generation and storage deployment, utilities, and data center support in the US. Evelyn holds degrees in architectural engineering, that's the bachelor's, civil engineering master's, and an MBA in international management. She's also a licensed professional engineer. Evelyn, welcome.
Thank you. It's so nice to see all of you or meet all of you. And I'm really excited about the presentation. And I'm going to talk about a couple of different things here. And if folks have questions, I am open for this being a discussion. I'll keep talking, but if you guys want to ask questions or whatever, I mean, if there's a way to ping or raise your hand, I'm happy to stop and go deeper into a part of the subject. So anyways, I guess I'll go ahead and start. So when Urena and I were talking about
1 second, Evelyn.
Sure.
Do you want us to do the interview questions first, or do you want to go through the
either one? We can do the interview questions. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll just ask a couple of questions before Evelyn gets into the presentation. So Evelyn's going to talk about goal setting, but Evelyn, how important is it to set goals for every year?
Extremely important. And I'll talk a lot about goal setting and the process that I use to do that. But I've found that unless you are looking above the horizon on where you want to go and who you want to be as a person, you know, within your own life and within your career, it's really hard to get there if you don't keep your eyes focused on the horizon. There's so many things that happen on a daily basis, and setting goals and checking in on yourself is really, I find, the best way to keep moving yourself forward in all areas. And the areas that Urena talked about, her 5-point pillar, I mean, it works for all of them. So I think it's really critical to understand and check in on yourself and hold yourself accountable.
Awesome, thank you. So accountability is a big thing. What should work-life balance look like?
So that's also a great question. So I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. I started one of my companies when my kids were small, and work-life balance will change over time depending on where you are in your life. Work-life balance is something that your balance may be more towards work, it may be more towards personal, it may be more towards aging parents. It really depends on sort of where you are. I think it's important to have a framework for recognizing and understanding what's important to you at any particular time. And that's really how you achieve balance. When you're not paying attention to all areas of your life and prioritizing them, that's where it really becomes problematic. And so again, the goal setting framework can help you identify the ebb and flow of your life and what that balance should look like.
Thank you, Evelyn. One last question. So what does a female energy CEO always keep in her purse?
That's a really funny question. When my children were younger, I had a lot of things in my purse. These days, I've really tried to slim down my purse and my life. I try to travel with as little as possible. Right now, my purse has my, wallet. It has keys. It has a phone, and a pen. And I'm really trying to slim down a lot of things and get to the very essential things. But I used to have a whole lot of things that I would carry around, and it's physical and it's also psychological, right? And so I think there's an interesting mix here between women and what we carry, both psychically, psychologically, as well as physically with us. So that's a fun question.
Great, thank you. So let's talk about Project U. And feel free to share your screen. I'll stop sharing.
Oh, okay. Let me figure that out then. Let me see here. Okay. There we go. Oops. Okay. Oh boy, I'm sharing the wrong screen. Hold on.
We can see it.
I'm trying to share the other screen. Let's see here. I had this all queued up and then it went away. Here we go. Okay. So I guess my first point, and something to really think about, is no one is responsible for your own career development. It's really you, and nobody cares about it as much as you. And you may have a lot of people in your life who are helping you and guiding you and mentoring you and all of these kinds of things, but it's really your journey, and you need to decide and understand what that journey looks like. And you also need to understand what matters most to you, because if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. And so it's really important to prioritize. And like I spoke about a little bit earlier, not all goals are professional. You need to take a look at your whole person and your whole life. And the framework that Urena gave in terms of the 5 points that she's focusing on for a professional Africa is a really nice balance to take a look at all of the areas in your life and decide what's important to you for your goal setting. I'm going to talk a little bit about just generally leadership in the energy industry and what it's like to be a woman in the energy industry, and then really about identifying your purpose, how you take that purpose and set it into goals, and how you achieve those goals. And then I do have at the end just some free educational resources that are really helpful that I have used myself. So a highlight on the energy industry, I am sitting in the U.S. and I work primarily on projects in the U.S. The energy industry is global. We're not grids may be, contained within countries, but the energy supply problem is a global problem, and we're facing as an industry climate change, a lot of geopolitical instability, inconsistent access to capital. That's been especially a problem in Africa. And then the rise of artificial intelligence is driving incredible demand for power everywhere. And the regulatory policy that the different governments are putting forward are oftentimes in isolation, and they're not looking at how we're interconnected. Supply chain comes from all over the world for, putting projects in each of the countries. And I feel like a lot of times that's not being factored in, but we are really a global industry. And I think we as industry leaders need to look at the fact that we're a global industry. What does this mean for leaders in the energy industry? I think that we need to be focusing on flexibility and adaptation. We need to have frameworks that we can look very quickly at risk. We need to have diverse leadership that are thinking about a lot of different problems from different perspectives, whether that's women, whether that's people newer in their careers, people that are older in their careers, people that really understand technology. We need everybody in the room who can provide leadership to help solve some of these global problems. We also need to really understand how to sort through all of the data that's out there. There's so much information on so many different sources. There's a lot of sources that are not necessarily reliable these days. That's a problem. And so we as leaders need mechanisms to sort through sort of all of the noise and really get the learning and information out of it. So I think it's really important to build frameworks where we can sort through the information. And then lastly, a lot of the stuff that's coming in, I think we as leaders need to take a step back and process some of that information. It's the global news cycle right now is 24/7. And if you don't have time to process it and really focus on your thought patterns and sort of getting meaning from all of the noise, it becomes really hard. So we also need time and space to take pauses and really process what's happening. One thing that I talk a lot about when I talk to people about leadership, and this concept has come to me from sort of working through my career as a woman and looking at leadership styles and how people and companies develop leaders. And a traditional leadership development model for females oftentimes is about mentorship, and companies will put mentorship programs in place, and there's women's organizations, and they'll talk a lot about mentorship. And mentorship is about helping people troubleshoot life problems, brainstorm challenges. They help you identify your goal. Mentors help you identify your goals. They show you a role model of where to go. And that's a very female, in my experience, based leadership model. contrary to that is a sponsorship model. And a sponsorship model, when you look at how companies and folks develop leaders, the sponsorship model tends to be a lot more male-based, from what I've seen. And sponsorship is a really different concept. Sponsorship is about having somebody vouch for you. It's about having somebody open a door. It's having somebody help make a connection where they are actually invested in your career, not just to help you solve a problem, but to say, hey, I'm vouching for this person. They're using their social capital to say, spend some time on this person, they're worth it. And that's just a very different leadership model. And when you take a look at how your company is developing your leaders, I think it's important to look at leadership development with these two different models and see how your company develops leaders. And is there any difference in how they're developing leaders between the females and the males in your organization? I think that will tell you a lot and teach you a lot about sort of if there are differences. And a lot of times people don't even recognize that there's differences, but this concept I think is really, really important because there are differences. And a sponsorship model is one that will, I believe, help you advance your career faster and really get you to positions of senior leadership, whereas mentorship is helping you with your current position and be more effective at your current position, but it's not necessarily getting you promoted and getting the doors open for you. A little bit about women in the energy industry. So I've been in the energy industry a very long time. I was in engineering school before that. It's a very male-dominated world. I think my key takeaway after all of these years is that, and this is going to be true for really everybody if you really think about it, when you're in this industry as a female, you will always be surrounded by people who think differently than you and lead differently than you. And, this will be true for, younger people coming in when there's a lot of older people and older people when there's a lot of younger people and all of these things, right? So this is sort of one of those fundamental truths that works in a lot of different ways because we all identify really differently. I am talking specifically about women and sort of my experience, but when I started looking at that and thinking about that early in my career, there are some real benefits to how to make this an asset to you. And so, identifying however you're different from the group, if you're a minority in the group, how does that make it different? How does that make it an asset for you? And for example, do you have different opportunities? Are you so unique that people remember what you say? I mean, there's a lot of things to help make this an asset. And one thing that that women do, I think, as a subgroup within the energy industry, is we network really, really well. And I think that's really important. And I think that because there are so few women in leadership positions in the industry, we're all kind of comfortable talking to each other about things and approaching each other in the hallway when we've never seen each other before because there's only four of us, right? And so, there's ways to take that uniqueness, whatever that is, and make that into an asset in your career. And don't be afraid to do that. The second thing that I find with women in the energy industry is that women tend to want to ask permission to be in the space. When you're in the space, you're in the space. You should be there. People are interested in your contributions. People are interested in what you have to say. They want to see how you can make a difference, how you can make an impact. We don't need to ask for permission. We speak. We should be out there claiming our expertise and not being on the side, but actually taking control of our careers. And you're there because you've earned it. If somebody feels like, if somebody's making you feel like you don't belong there, they're the one that shouldn't be in the room, not you, right? If you're there, you belong there. So I think that's a really important mind shift that we as women leaders need to have, is our right to be in the room. And then lastly, my third fundamental truth is, regardless of all of that, you have to be confident. You have to know what you're doing. You have to do your homework. You have to really understand what the issues are. And when you are providing a meaningful contribution, provide a meaningful contribution. And it's okay to not know the answers. And it's okay to say, I don't know the answers. But that actually shows more competence when you understand what you know and what you don't know. And so competence is really important in being in the room as a woman in the energy industry. So moving a little bit on to your goals and your values. And do you even know who you want to be? And I think this is something that's so important. We all go to school, we'll go to engineering school, we'll spend 4 or 5 years learning a specific trade, we'll have a vision of where we want to be, and we get out, we graduate, and suddenly we're confronted with life, right? And have you ever sat down and really thought about, what do I really value? Who do I want to be? What does my professional life look like? And what does my personal life look like? And sat down and really graphed your values, your understanding of what those values are, the importance, your priorities, because you need to really understand when you're looking at the arc of your career, where do you want to go? And how does that need to look like for you? If you're a person that is going to have a family, how does that impact what your professional career is going to be? If you're a person that's not interested in having a family, do you have other interests that are really, really important to you? And what are the things that you need to take a look at holistically for you as an individual and figure out how that is going to work in your life and how you set your priorities? Um, the next couple slides are something that I went through years ago in my career. And this is a goal setting exercise that is a specific exercise that helps you identify and answer those questions. And so I'm sharing with you some of my results of this exercise. But the first question that I sat down and asked myself, and again, this is actually a framework from Franklin Covey. I went through a Franklin Covey planning ceremony or uh, class years and years ago, and I've sort of adapted it to what works for me. But this was originally the framework of where this came from. The first step in this process is to really sit down and look at your values and figure out for you what is the most important. And when you look at what Urena put up with the 5-point star, it was talking about wealth, health, relationships, culture, and style. And those were all on my list of things that I took a look at from my different area. I took a look at financial security. What does that look like to me? Does it need to be lots and lots of zeros, or does it financial security need to give me freedom? In my case, I looked at that and I said, I need enough money that I can travel and that I don't need to worry about money. I don't need that, right? I really took a look at that value and I decided, what is my definition of financial security? The same thing with integrity, the same thing with fitness and health. What does it look like? And the examples that I'm going to give you going forward are actually going to be about fitness and health, because that's a pretty easy one that people will sort of understand. And we all define things differently, but I'm going to continue with that one as sort of my discussion of the process that I went through. But when you're going through that values exercise, take a look at what that means for you. What does spirituality mean to you? How does that manifest? Are you somebody that meditates? Are you somebody that goes to church? Are you somebody that contributes in the community? What does that look like? What does teamwork look like? What does success look like for you? And you may have completely different values in these, right? These were mine, but I think it's important to sit down and take a look at everything that you value and then define what that actually means. Again, financial security, what does that mean to you? It will mean something different to you than to me, but understand what that means. And then the second thing, after you've defined what those values are, is to say, how do I show up? Who am I? Who am I responsible for? What are my roles? How do I contribute? And I did this again a long time ago, and my kids were very small. And my very first thing that popped up in my mind was, I'm a mom. I have 2 little human beings I'm responsible for, and those need to come first in all things. If I did this list today, it would be different because my kids are in college. And so now the priority is different, but this was a priority list that I put together long ago. And these were all ways that I interacted with people and the relationships that I had that were important to me. And so in doing this one, you're also starting to think about, what does a mother with a goal of the environment look like, right? What does a mother with the goal of financial security look like? So it's financial security for me and my children, right? I mean, that's why the roles are really important, because it starts to help you understand where you show up. And from there, then what I took a look at was, what is my life's purpose? Who do I want to be and why am I here? Now that I know what I value, now that I know who I care about and how I show up for me and for other people, where do I want to go? Where do I want to be? And this is very broad. It's not about your career. It's about you as a person and how you identify. I think it's really interesting to look at the life's purpose and think about that from your personal life perspective and also your professional life perspective. And they may be the same and they may be very different. And another way to sort of get to this answer of what your life's purpose is think about the times in your life when you've been the most happy and you felt the most fulfilled. Were those things at work? Were you volunteering in the community? Were you reading, books to your niece or nephew? What for you showed up as your moments of happiness and fulfillment? And how do you integrate more of those into your world? And so you first need to understand what those areas are. And from there, you can start to move to what your purpose is. I guess, and the last part of that is when I went through this exercise, I thought about where could I have the most impact. And one of my, and I'll share this, there's actually two things I talk about going forward. One of them is the health and fitness and then the environment. And I've been in the renewable energy industry since 2001. And when I was doing this exercise, I looked at climate change and I thought, how, in the areas of my life, what are some problems that I can help with? And so the next slide, I'll show you sort of what the professional objectives were. So when I took a look at, again, my personal and my professional objectives, I said, climate change is a real issue. I work in renewable energy. Renewable energy can actually have a pretty meaningful contribution to help mitigate climate change. And so this was one of the goals that I came up with. And I looked at that and I said, okay, if I really am going to try to impact climate change, what does that look like for me? Like, how would that manifest? And I came up with 3 objectives about how I can help impact positively climate change. One of them was industry leadership. So for me, again, this is all for you, and you need to take a look at what these are and come up with your objectives. But when I defined that for me, I said industry leadership. And how do I do that? I help grow leaders. I help set examples. I collaborate with people and I advocate. There's a couple of different professional organizations in the United States that are like the Solar Energy Industry Association and the American Clean Power Association. And they do advocacy days where they go to our Congress and we talk to legislators about, energy and energy policy, primarily renewable energy. And so I've been participating in those for years because for me, it's really important to get a voice out there and to try to make change through policy. I looked at the company that I was running and I said, in order for me to have a meaningful impact on climate change, which is the chosen area that my company's in, it needs to be a successful company. I need to help my clients de-risk energy projects so they're financed. And so that's what we spend a lot of our time doing is minimizing risks, facilitating financing, and we do a lot of training for the industry, for our clients, and within our own organization. So that was sort of the second objective under this purpose of mine. And then the third was overcoming resistance to change. And there's a lot of resistance right now in the United States to climate change. There are a lot of folks that we've become very politicized. Energy should not be political. I don't know how I do actually know how it became political. It shouldn't have become political. It's not okay. Everybody needs energy. And if we want to continue to grow as societies with harmony and all of those sorts of things, we need more energy. And so I spend a lot of time talking to planning and zoning folks, county commissioners, landowners, those kinds of things, different stakeholders about their thoughts on renewable energy and energy development and why are they resistant, trying to really understand it. And then I take those lessons learned back and try to help with messaging and try to help with mitigation and those sorts of things. So from a professional standpoint, this was the framework that I developed to try to, as a really high level, here's my horizon activity. On the personal side, I had a goal of, I want to be healthy. I want to age in place. I want to, I want to have a long life. I want to be there for my family and for my kids. And so I looked at, with respect to my own personal health, what does that look like? And that looked like physical goals, mental goals, and spiritual goals. And so then again, I looked at, from a physical side, what's important And this is, this is a framework that's light, but it's actually pretty meaningful in terms of my own health and what my health objectives were. So, I looked at the different areas: stress reduction, positivity, those sorts of things, as well as spiritual goals. And for me, I define spiritual as, exposure to nature, meditation, personal relationships, connection, friendships, all of those sorts of things, was how I defined my personal objectives. And so when I had this framework of what was meaningful to me in my life, I said, where do I go from here? Because I know where I want to go now, right? How do I get there? And what does that actually look like? And so the next thing I did was I set goals. And goal setting is really interesting. What I've also learned in the goal setting process is the end goal is maybe not the right thing to do as opposed to a commitment. So I actually do this in December. I sit down every year and I look at my framework, and the framework that I provided, the two examples for, there's a whole bunch of more stuff under there, under this, right? There's more personal objectives, there's more professional objectives, and there's a lot more, but I'm giving you guys two examples. But I take a look in December at what I'm going to be doing the next year. And I say, okay, if I want to be healthy for this year, what does that look like to me? My goal was exercise more. How do I incorporate that into the next calendar year? So I'm using this as a very concrete example of how the goal setting process works. So I took out my yearly goals and I reviewed them and I said, okay, I need to maintain my health. I want to have a healthy weight, blah, blah, blah. What does that look like? I said, okay, that looks like I need to exercise more. I didn't say I'm trying to lose 15 pounds or I'm trying to bench 300 pounds or whatever it is, right? I said, I need to exercise more. And how am I going to do that? I looked at my monthly goals and I said, okay, my monthly goal is 12 Pilates classes a month. Again, I'm not focused on like a weight loss or anything like that. I find that putting that kind of a goal in place is counterproductive for me because it's about the end goal. And when you don't get there, you're disappointed. But if you do your 12 Pilates classes a month, you feel really good about what you did, right? So it's really hard sometimes to get to that end goal. You may or may not get there. It should be about the small steps that you're taking along the way, pointing in the right direction always. It's really easy when you have goals that are too big or too lofty to be disappointed because they're hard to reach, right? So you need to celebrate all of those successes. So my monthly objective was the 12 Pilates classes. Then every week I sit down on Sunday and I say, what am I going to do this week? And I schedule those classes so they're on my calendar. And then on a particular day, if I have something that's blocking whatever that goal is, I readjust for the day. But that way you're getting 80 or 90% of it and you're on a achievement basis, not an end of goal objective. And it's a lot easier to get where you want to go when you're making these smaller steps very, very consistently. And the other really important part of this process for me, and the reason that I do it on this really broad scale, is because your day will fill up with everybody else's priorities and everybody else's goals. And suddenly you're in March or June or whatever, and you didn't take the time to do the things that are really, really important to you. And so starting from the very beginning in this process and saying, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to go with my goal, you make time for it because you put it in your calendar before everything else. And then it's scheduled and you protect that time. And it can be goals with kids, it can be goals with your spouse, it can be goals with whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. This is a process that allows you the freedom to achieve your goals in a very steady process over time because it's already built into your entire world. So that's sort of the high level process that I use to go through that goal planning process and really try to achieve my goals. And I think it's been really productive. I've been doing this for 15 or 20 years, and it's very structured. And I go back and I review and I keep my notes. And it's and I'm not great all of the time. I don't get it every single week, but I try to make the time as often as possible. And I have the arch, right? The arch of what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to achieve. The next slide is about some free educational resources. Goal setting, that framework that I work with, I put here under goal setting, and that's Franklin Covey is great. They do time management, they do goal setting. There's a planner that I purchased from them that has an entire exercise. And I use that actual physical planner to do my planning. I find that really effective. A book that I'm reading right now is called Tiny Experiments. And there's that's a link to an article in there that talks about this process. It is a book, but the tiny experiments concept is really neat. It's again about every day doing the little thing to move things forward and not getting lost in having this goal that is so challenging that, you're intimidated by your own goal, right? It's about making that forward progress every day. And you'll find after a period of time, you're so near your goal, yet you were focused on the daily little experiments of life that are making you happy, that are moving you towards your goal. And then the other three resources on top are actually coursework on the power industry. MIT has a great open courseware format. These are all free online courses. If you are in the power industry, they have courses on transmission and distribution and renewable energy and all sorts of things. These are courses that they give at MIT that they've recorded, and there's even in some cases the study guides and the study notes in there. So it's a really good refresher, or also if you're new to the industry and you want to learn more. Some of them are really, really in the weeds on, whatever SCADA or something. I mean, really, really detailed, but a lot of them are. So anyways, that's a great resource. Stanford has a couple that are engineering everywhere. And then they have a lot of them that are low cost courses. So they're paid, but they're relatively low cost for getting a course at Stanford. And of course, you don't get a piece of paper for any of these, right? This is just all your own education through the internet. And then NYSERDA, which is the state of New York, has a catalog just on free energy resources for online courses. And so they pull links from like the country of Denmark has a lot of really interesting courses on wind energy as an example. And they have a whole list of all of these resources on a global basis of folks that have put content out there about the energy industry. That's a really good resource for clean energy and just educating yourself. So 3 technical resources and 3 personal development resources I've put here. And so that's the end of my formal talk. And I wanted to leave some time for questions, comments, thoughts, anything that you all might have about how to set your own goals and how to help with your own career development and developing your leadership skills.
All right, thank you so much, Evelyn. I was taking lots of notes while you were speaking. If anyone has questions, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. While we're waiting for people to get their thoughts together, I will ask, what is successful networking? Aloye, I'm not sure. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, yeah, that was perfect. That's how you say my name, Aluwaye. Hi. So my question basically is, what do you do when you feel like basically like you're either your back's up against the wall, in your career, or like you feel like because you're not, I guess because you're either newer to the industry or you're not you don't have a law degree, people don't listen to you, and you get for me, I've gotten imposter syndrome. So I want to know what do you do to just combat those feelings?
That's a great question. And going back to my statement about if you're in the room, you belong, I feel like oftentimes you're in a room with how many people, and you're not the only person feeling that way. None of us have the answers to anything. I've been doing this a very long time, and I learn every single day. And I learn from people that are, 15 years earlier in their career every single day. And I think that the further you get in your career, the more complexity you see in things, right? When you first start in your career, it feels like, oh, I understand this is easy. And then 6 months later, you find an example of whatever that thing is that was very different than what you expected. And you say, oh, I didn't understand that well. And you keep doing this through the years. And I think the more experience you get, the less you know, honestly, because you really start to see the richness and the complexity of things. And that's normal. That is all of us. as business professionals, if we are not asking those questions like, oh my gosh, I thought I knew that and I didn't, let me learn it. That's to me not about imposter syndrome. That's about a greater realization that it's complex, right? And so I think the more that you dig into certain things that you're unsure about, or as you've discovered something like this, whatever, if you're in a meeting or something. But also I think don't be afraid to speak up and ask questions. And, when someone asks you a question, I don't know that, but I will research it, is really valid. And you go back and you research it and you kind of circle up with whoever the person was. I think a lot of times it's our own lack of confidence and we feel like we're different and we're not. Everybody in that room has questions about something. And I think coming to that realization and just saying, I actually belong here and I do know what I'm talking about. And I don't know everything, but I'm not expected to know everything, is a really important thing to sort of give you the confidence to speak up and, showcase yourself and your skills a little bit.
Thank you, Evelyn. And thank you, Aloye. Nonya, you have your hand up, and then we'll do Amarchi and Dinah.
Yeah, thank you, Evelyn. My question is just around your goals, right? I was quite interested in that bit because I'm very big on goal setting as well. However, it's very easy, I would say, to sit down, set your goals, and map out how you want to track it. But then there are just days it feels like you're swimming against the tide. So my question is really around how you stay motivated to just keep pushing, even when, I mean, sometimes this is what you should do, but you just don't have that thing in you to push. Like on days like that, how do you navigate that, particular emotion or that state of mind of just not being, motivated enough to push through? Or what do you do?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, you need to recognize when it's time to be kind to yourself and when it's time to push yourself. And sometimes you need to be kind to yourself. And sometimes yourself or myself needs to sit in the bathtub with a candle, right? And that's okay. And that's legitimate. And if I do that instead of going to Pilates in the morning or whatever it is, that's okay. And I have to be kind and honor that I need that right then and now. At the same time, I do keep myself motivated because I'm putting stuff on my calendar that I need to do. And so, if I do take a pause on whatever that activity is, I try to either, make sure I do the next one. I will give myself a pass. That's okay. Because sometimes we need a pass, but I really try to get back to whatever the thing is that I've committed to do as soon as possible. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Nonya. Amarchi, you're next.
Hi everyone. I really did enjoy this presentation. I could tell a lot of all the slides were just speaking to me. So I am like you, I'm writing things down. My biggest question is around the mentorship and the sponsorship. It seems to me that sponsorship has already been predetermined, right? One question, how do you bridge mentorship into sponsorship? What does that look like for the females in this energy business, or actually anywhere you are, when you have a mentor, but you're actually, for you to move to the executive level, you don't really need a mentor, you need a sponsor. How do you get into that exclusive sponsorship club?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So I guess I'll talk about two things. If you have a mentor already, somebody that you have this relationship with, do some research and figure out how they can help you move forward. So instead of like, talk to me about this work problem that I have, who are they connected to on LinkedIn? What organizations do they attend? What events do they attend? And say, hey, I see that you have gone to the IEEE show. I'd really like to go. Do you know of any speaking opportunities? Or I see that you're a member of this group. Can you bring me along? Can you introduce me to this person that you're connected with? I'd really like to know more about it. And so you can start to get people thinking about moving your career along. The other thing is that have the conversation with the person that's your mentor and just say, hey, I'd like more engagement in helping my career. So that's if you have the existing relationship. If you don't have the existing relationship, the sponsorship is based on trust, and you need to build that relationship with somebody. But it's okay to go to your supervisor or somebody that's not a formal mentor and say, hey, I noticed you're engaged in this activity. Would you bring me sometime? Could you introduce me to this person? Could you give me more information about how you got to this place? And really be a lot more assertive about getting the introduction, getting the invitation, and asking for it. It's okay to ask for it. And also and I don't know if anybody's in business development, but this is one of those things in business development. You can do a lot of research around, who you want to get to in terms of learning, introductions, all of that, and keep working on getting those introductions through people peripheral to the person that you're interested in meeting, right? And then you'll get in, but you need to do your research, and you need to actively ask for those opportunities from the folks that can provide those opportunities.
Great, thank you. Dinah and then Zuru.
Hi, I really enjoyed this talk this morning. It was really good. My question is, I'm not necessarily in the energy space, but I am in the healthcare space currently, and I'm looking to expand my team, really creating a strong C-suite board so that I can pitch to investors. I'm trying to convince people with different talents to assist me in this healthcare tech space that I'm going into. I do have a lot of clinical experience, but what is your suggestion in being able to convince people to join my board, especially if I don't necessarily have the financials just yet? To necessarily hire in terms of a position, but getting people to believe in my vision and also to help pitch the idea to investors so that we can grow the company and scale forward.
So there's a lot of people in their mid to late careers that would love board experience, but haven't been chosen for the paid board. And one way to get on a paid board is to get on a volunteer board and really start to showcase it. And they're looking for ways to build their resume. And so I would look for business professionals that are later in their career, not currently sitting on boards, but that are thought leaders. They've got a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. They've been doing a lot of presentations to different conferences, but they're not on boards yet. I would bet that many of those people would love to be on a board because it also boosts their resume and it gives them some credibility. And so, approaching folks like that, first you need to sort of identify them and figure out, again, what organizations they belong to, who are they connected with on LinkedIn? Can you get a warm introduction to somebody? That's sort of what you need to do, but it could actually take quite a lot of research, right? And really, come up with a slate of potential candidates, figure based on sort of their LinkedIn and all of that, and then figure out how you can get those warm introductions based on who they know, and start to map it out, and then really try to target getting that introduction and sharing with them what you're looking for. But there's a lot of people that are sort of in that late stage career that are looking for these type of opportunities.
Right. I think that's the issue that I've been having is just locating, like I'm a nurse by trade. And a lot of the other people that I do know are nurses, but necessarily right now, what I'm looking for is someone who's going to be a CTO. I'm looking for a COO and also a CFO, so that we can kind of cover all the bases of our operations and going forward. Because in order to be a serious candidate to investors, they need to see that you have, you have willing followers. And I spent 2 years of ideation already, and now I'm ready to really start launching forward to raise money, and that's my kind of bottleneck right now.
Yeah. It's a hard problem, but again, like keep doing the research and look for those industry leaders that are on LinkedIn and doing a lot of posting. I think that would be a good candidate pool.
Thank you, Dinah. Thanks, Evelyn. We have one more question, Zuru.
Hi, thank you so much. This is such a great webinar. My question is, and this might be a different angle, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in preparing for the results of our goals. Sometimes we set these big, meaningful goals and we do the work to achieve them, but haven't quite prepared for the changes or the ripple effects that come with actually getting there. So how do you usually think through that side of goal setting?
That's a great question. And I think sometimes I've been in situations where I've gotten there and I didn't really understand I was there. So, right. I think that, we kind of move through our lives and get overtaken by what's happening. And sometimes there are these great and unexpected surprises. But I guess just take time to honor what you achieved and recognize it and give yourself a pat on the back. I mean, you may be the only one that does recognize it and give yourself a pat on the back. But I think it's processing sort of those changes is really important. And, when you get to a goal, you may want to go back and really take a look at your goals again and say, was this the right goal? I've gotten to this place. Is there a new goal? But you don't want to lose the momentum that you have either. And so I think, reassessing where your life is at today, what your goals need to be to change, I think is a good way to work through that.
Excellent. Thank you for the questions. Evelyn, thank you so much for the presentation. This was recorded, so I will be sharing the recording when it's ready on LinkedIn as well as with you all. So just keep an eye out. If you think of any other questions, do let me know and we'll circle back to you. So I'm going to share one quick slide as we end. Again, Evelyn, thank you so much for taking time to prepare the presentation and then to actually present. I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much.
And let's see, the chat room, people are saying thank you. If you can see the chat. Okay, so I just wanted to share that in April, we are going to talk about style. So Nonya actually is going to be speaking to us. So she's a personal brand and image consultant. Nonya is a London College of Fashion trained personal stylist and image consultant who helps men and women curate a timeless style that reflects their individuality while building a strong and authentic personal brand. So this is going to be fun as well. So I hope to see you all there. But again, thank you. I'm going to read out some of the chat. Let's see here. So Amarachi says, thank you. Uchechi says, thank you so much. It was an awesome presentation. Nonya says, thank you. Sunny says, thank you for the presentation. My question about sponsorship was answered by you. Someone else says, that was really helpful. Thank you so much. That's Zuru. Okay, Zuru said that. And then Sunny said, thank you. Okay, so some people called in the beginning but had to leave sometime in the middle, but again, this was recorded. So thank you everyone for your time and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.